Diagnostic company Immunovia recently informed the market of an upcoming share issue. To get some more information, I'm happy to be able to present Immunovia CEO, Mr. Jeff Borcherding. Please welcome, Jeff.
Thank you very much for having me.
Could you please start off by giving us your elevator pitch?
Sure. Immunovia is an early stage diagnostics company. We are developing a test to detect pancreatic cancer at the early stages when it's really needed to help patients survive over the long term. We have made tremendous progress in developing our next generation test for detecting pancreatic cancer, and over the rest of this year we'll be going through some of the critical clinical testing that we need to demonstrate that the test really is as strong and as accurate as we think that it is.
Mm-hmm. You were appointed CEO a bit more than a year ago. How would you describe the past year?
It's been energizing. I think we've made a tremendous amount of changes within the company, but through those changes, the organization and the team have been fantastic about keeping focused on our mission and keeping their focus on developing that next generation test and moving it towards market. So I'm very, very proud of what we've been able to achieve and the fact that we now have a test where we've identified biomarkers that can detect pancreatic cancer, and I'm looking forward to the upcoming clinical steps to really put that to the test.
Mm-hmm. At the annual general meeting June 19th, you resolved to carry out issue of shares and warrants. Subscription period is August 16th through 30th, with preferential rights for the company's existing shareholders of initially approximately 70 million SEK.
Yes.
How do you plan to put this capital into work?
So for the remainder of this year, we're going to be very focused on the technical validation of our test and the clinical validation of the test. And what that basically means is that we need to make sure that as we're in the lab, we have these assays that we can use to measure these biomarkers. We need to make sure that they're accurate, make sure that they're stable, make sure that every time we measure that, that protein that we're measuring it the same way. That'll be the first part of the process. And then in the fourth quarter of the year, we'll move on to clinical validation. That's really where we'll take a look at how does the test perform in separating pancreatic cancer cases from those patients that don't have pancreatic cancer. And we've already shown good results there, but this will be a larger study, an additional study to confirm that accuracy that we showed earlier really holds true and can be something that physicians can count on.
And there will also be two warrant series included, TO2 and TO3. How and when will they come into play?
So they'll come into play in early 2025, and as we move into next year, our focus will really be on two things. On the one hand, we'll be focused on getting ready to launch the test commercially in the United States. That'll happen in the second half of 2025. The second thing that we'll use those funds for is additional clinical studies. It's really important that we generate significant clinical data to show the effectiveness of the test so that when we go and seek reimbursement for the test, payers are willing to give us reimbursement, and that's really the key to generating revenue in the coming years.
Okay, and you touched upon it before, but how urgent is an early detection test for pancreatic cancer?
It's incredibly urgent. So what we know is that the vast majority of people, 80% of people who get diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, get diagnosed at stage 3 and 4. When that happens, their likelihood of surviving for 5 years is just 3%. Conversely, if we can get that patient diagnosed at stage 1 or stage 2, surgery is an option, and suddenly the survival rate jumps up. It's almost 1 in 2 at 5 years for those people that get diagnosed early. So it's incredibly important that we change the way that we are detecting pancreatic cancer.
And what's the size of your addressable market?
It's very large. There are a lot of people who are at high risk for pancreatic cancer. People who might have a family history, maybe people who have a genetic mutation, or maybe they develop diabetes later in life. all of those things can put a person at higher risk for pancreatic cancer. So the test is really focused on those high-risk groups. We estimate that in the United States, our initial market, there are about 1.8 million of those people conservatively. We also believe that there's about the same number in Europe.
And if we talk about the US market, what can you tell us about the size of the reimbursement?
So we think there's a significant opportunity to get reimbursement in the United States. We know that today, these people who are at high risk, if they're in surveillance at all, what they're doing is they're getting an MRI or maybe even an endoscopic ultrasound. These are expensive imaging procedures, and so from a reimbursement standpoint, we're optimistic that payers will look at a blood test and say, this is not only a better way for patients to be able to surveil their risk and detect pancreatic cancer, but it's a better way for payers because it's as effective and costs them less.
And how do you plan to approach other markets?
So I think our initial focus is very much on the U.S. We're a small company, and so it's important for us to be focused. So there's plenty of opportunity to grow in the U.S., but certainly over time we see opportunities in Europe and in Asia as well. One of the things that's important is that when we changed our technology platform, we moved to using a common commercially available platform. That gives us a much better ability to expand geographically by putting our test in a kit rather than having to do it at a central lab.
And is there anything you can share when it comes to partnering discussions?
Well, as you can imagine, I can't share a whole lot, but what I can share is that we've met with several large diagnostics companies. They clearly see the clinical need and the market opportunity in pancreatic cancer. They've also been really excited about our approach to the problem. Using protein biomarkers is something that there aren't a lot of companies doing broadly in oncology, and so they see that as a real opportunity. I think one of the key things is that we're going to have to continue to show the clinical data that I mentioned earlier. So it'll take us a little while to be able to have enough data that we can really generate the interest to the point where one of those big diagnostics companies would say, okay, yep, we're ready to commercially partner or we're ready to acquire the company.
Your biobank of samples is often mentioned in your presentations. How does this impact your abilities?
It's tremendously positive for us. It's a huge source of competitive advantage as well as just clinical advantage. We've got a biobank that includes thousands of samples. Many of those samples are from people with pancreatic cancer. Others are from those high-risk groups that I talked about earlier. Having that biobank of samples that we can tap into accelerates our efforts tremendously, because that's usually the thing that slows companies down is getting those samples in so that they can fuel their product development efforts or so that they can move forward with their clinical studies. Having that existing biobank has allowed us to really accelerate our progress.
Okay, and how do you work with or cooperate with key opinion leaders?
In a number of ways. In fact, part of the reason we have such an extensive biobank is the strength of our relationship with key opinion leaders. Because we've got long-standing, established relationships with these key opinion leaders, they've been very supportive of us, have been very willing to share samples with us to fuel our efforts. They also give us excellent advice on the makeup of our test. They give us excellent counsel on how to interpret the results that we're seeing. And in some cases, they may push us and say, hey, you need to do more in this space, or we need to shore up this part of the data package. So really, really good advice. And ultimately, once we have a test that's ready for market, those key opinion leaders who have been part of the development will be really critical because they'll be key to educating physicians who are actually going to use the test on a day-to-day basis.
And when it comes to your own organization, what measures have you done to adjust to the stage that you are in now and going forward to the next phase of your business?
Yeah, since I became CEO, we've made a number of changes to the organization. Some of those were very difficult. one of the key things that we did was to significantly reduce the size of the company. We reduced the number of employees from about 70 down to 12 today. And that's been really important to help us be a lot more cost efficient. We had a cost structure in the past that was simply too high. We needed to reduce our cash burn on a monthly basis, and reducing our staffing really was critical to doing that. I'm happy to say, though, we've been able to retain employees that are critical to our success, and those employees, together with the right set of consultants and contractors on the outside of the company, have really fueled our progress over the last year.
And last but not least, according to you, why is Immunovia a good investment?
This is a tremendous clinical need. There is a well-recognized need to diagnose pancreatic cancer earlier. The alternatives are not good. Imaging is expensive and it's cumbersome. The market wants and needs a blood-based biomarker test to detect pancreatic cancer. We're in a great position to be the company that delivers against that need because of our history, because of our biobank, because of our KOL relationships. We're moving really quickly to address the need, and I feel very good about our long-term prospects.
Jeff Borcherding, CEO of Immunovia, thank you for all your answers.
Thank you very much.